amendment, but I want to ask unanimous consent, Mr. President, to have made part of the record at the end of my present remarks a letter from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network on those two competing amendments.
Without objection.
I won't read the whole letter, Mr. President, but I will read parts of it where this letter addressed to me says, I'm writing to express Reign's concern with the draft VAWA amendment by Senator Klobuchar. That's VAWA, of course, the Violence Against Women Act. Unlike the Cornyn amendment, we do not believe this draft amendment will make effective or positive improvements to the Debbie Smith Act. Indeed, they conclude later in the letter, they say, overall, we believe that this amendment is largely symbolic and will not have any impact, I want to read this correctly, will not have the impact in reducing the backlog that we find in the Cornyn amendment. Very quickly, there's no requirement in the Klobuchar amendment that their audits actually have to be conducted. So to me, that seems like a case of willful blindness to the size and scope of the backlogs and the problems. There is no requirement in the Klobuchar alternative for a registry. In other words, there's no way the Department of Justice can make sure that the money granted out to law enforcement is actually used for the purpose for which the grant was intended, by creating a registry. And in fact, the Klobuchar amendment actually diverts some of the funds from the core purpose of the Debbie Smith Act for purpose of testing this critical evidence. And I would say it takes out a provision for administrative subpoenas to track unregistered sex offenders. It cuts out some of the sentencing provisions in my amendment for people guilty of interstate child sex trafficking, children under 12 years of age. And it eliminates the sense of the Senate provision that I've worked on with Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois, condemning a website known as Backpage.com, which has been identified in the New York Times and other places as a source of advertising for underage prostitution, something certainly worthy of our condemnation as a Senate. So I will come back to talk about other aspects of this, but I would hope my colleagues would look at the letter from RAINN, the largest anti-sexual violence organization in the United States, that says that they believe that the Klobuchar amendment is largely symbolic and does not do as much as the Cornyn amendment would to get at these perpetrators and to identify them for what they are. With that, Mr. President, I would reserve the remainder of my time and yield the floor.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, what is the time allotment at present?
Is that including Conan's time that he's going to get back? The minority has 12.5 minutes total.
Thank you.
And the majority has 12 minutes.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Senator from New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pleased to be here to join those of my colleagues who are urging that we come together this afternoon, and I'm pleased we're going to see votes on the Violence Against Women Act to reauthorize the legislation as it has passed through the Judiciary Committee. As we all know, domestic violence continues to be a serious problem across our country. In New Hampshire, nearly 1 in 4 women has been sexually assaulted. At least a third of New Hampshire women have been victims of a physical assault by an intimate partner. More than half of all women in my state have experienced sexual or physical assault over the course of their lifetimes. All of us share in an obligation to stop this epidemic, and VAWA is a proven tool in this fight. The real importance of this legislation lies not in the statistics, but in hearing about those women who have been helped by the services that are provided by the Violence Against Women Act. I've had a chance to visit several crisis centers around New Hampshire in the past few weeks, and I've met with the survivors and the advocates who depend on this funding. I went to a crisis center called Bridges in Nashua, where I spoke with a survivor of domestic violence. She told me that when you're a victim of domestic violence, you think you're worthless. And she said, there are so many times that I would have gone back to my abuser, except that I had the ability to call Bridges crisis line at 2 in the morning and talk to somebody who could help me so that I knew I was supported. Because of the Violence Against Women Act, the Bridges program can operate and have a crisis line go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because of the support that she got through the Bridges program, this survivor is going back to college, she's free from abuse, and she's going to have a life that's saved because of programs that are supported by the Violence Against Women Act. The law enforcement community has been very supportive of this legislation. They need this bill, too. In New Hampshire, half of all murders are domestic violence related. I spoke to the chief of police in Nashua, our state's second largest city. He gets just $68,000 from the Violence Against Women Act funding, but that allows him to have a dedicated unit within the police department that can respond to domestic violence and sexual assault cases. I heard from retired Henniker Police Chief Timothy Russell. He's a 37-year veteran of law enforcement, and he now travels around the state teaching police officers how to respond to domestic violence cases. And it's funds from the Violence Against Women Act that allow him to conduct the specialized training so that police officers can identify patterns of domestic abuse and prevent those situations from escalating. Officers are taught to maintain good relationships with crisis centers, and Chief Russell tells them, if you see a victim in trouble, get a counselor on the phone to talk to them. Tell them what their options are. Again, thanks to funding from the Violence Against Women Act, he has resources to bring this training throughout New Hampshire to police officers so that they can help the victims. I saw just this kind of cooperation in action when I visited the Family Justice Center in Rochester, New Hampshire this week. They have made a multitude of services accessible in one place, so victims don't have to go all over town or all over the county to get the help they need. They can see a counselor, get child care assistance, fill out an application for a protective order, and women can even get their injuries treated and officially documented. They can get free legal help, all in this Family Justice Center made possible by a Violence Against Women Act grant. You know, if we don't support this because it's the right thing to do, and I think it is, we should also support this legislation because it saves money. It's a cost-effective approach because in addition to reducing crime, victims are less reliant on emergency rooms, they're less likely to need state assistance when they can connect with resources, they can get help with child care and housing and get back on their feet and become productive citizens. This is the type of help that every citizen deserves, and it ultimately makes us all safer. I'm also pleased to see that there's particular language in this legislation that requires service providers to help any victim of domestic violence, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, or immigration status. I think Sergeant Jill Rocky, who I met when I was at Rochester at the Family Justice Center, put it best when she said, when someone calls for help in a domestic or sexual violence case, we don't ask if they're an immigrant or if they're gay. We just go. Well, hopefully today we will respond in passing this bill with that same sense of urgency. Let's make sure that we don't let victims, first responders, or our communities down. Let's get everyone the help they need and deserve. Let's pass this legislation today. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I rise to speak on behalf of my substitute amendment along with Senator Grassley and other co-sponsors, and I'd like to call up Senate Bill 2095.
Clerk will report.
The senator from Texas, Mrs. Hutchison, for herself and others, proposes an amendment number 2095.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that we dispense with the reading of the amendment.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the substitute is a bill that takes the good parts and the important parts of the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act that I think are universal. The parts that have passed unanimously through Congress in recent years, starting 16 years ago. But the substitute also strengthens the bill. And I'm glad that we're going to get a chance to vote on something that will strengthen it, because there are some areas where the underlying bill is not as strong as our substitute bill, Senate Bill 2095, would be, especially in the area of abuse of children and child pornography and child sex trafficking. This is our most vulnerable victim, the child who is abused. And I want to read from some of the national organizations for victims as they write about this important aspect, which is included in our bill but not covered as well in the underlying bill. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, with whom I work to try to get the Amber Alert to be relevant across state lines, where we have actually saved, we believe, 550 children who've been abducted and taken across state lines, but because of the quick action of the Amber Alert system, they have been able to be safely brought back home. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children says that the possession of child pornography is a serious crime that deserves a serious sentence. Therefore, we support a reasonable mandatory minimum sentence for this offense. As we have testified, child protection measures must also include the ability to locate non-compliant registered sex offenders. The U.S. Marshal Service is the lead federal law enforcement agency for tracking these fugitives, and their efforts would be greatly enhanced if they had the authority to serve administrative subpoenas. Now, that is key because it is covered in our substitute. It is covered in Senator Cornyn's amendment. It is not covered in either the underlying Leahy bill nor in Senator Klobuchar's side-by-side. So this is a major area of strengthening that this very important victims' rights organization is supporting. Shared Hope is another children's advocate organization that says child pornography is one form of sex trafficking and is too often intertwined with other forms of sexual exploitation, including prostitution and sexual performance. Stiffer penalties will bring greater deterrence and justice for the victims. And then RAIN, which is the largest victims' rights organization for sexual assault, says thank you for including the SAFER Act, which is Senator Cornyn's amendment. We're grateful for your leadership in the battle to prevent sexual violence and prosecute its perpetrators. And then PROTECT also says that the apologists for child pornography traffickers deny the pain and harm done by the possessors of these images, and go further to say that simple processors, which would mean people who have this and have it on their computers and sell it, fuel the market for more and more crime scene recordings of children being raped, tortured, and degraded. Now, these are people who are for the Cornyn Amendment, and they are for the protection that we have in the substitute. And it is so important that we strengthen this area to try to protect our most vulnerable victims. And that's one area where strengthening can make such a difference. The Marshals Service being able to have the administrative subpoena will allow them to track even known sexual predators who have fled, and you have a hard time finding them. I gave an illustration this morning of 2 children who were abducted by a known sexual predator, but we didn't have the administrative ability to find that sexual predator, and ended up killing one of the children, the children's mother, the children's boyfriend, and another relative. I mean, Madam President, in the underlying bill, the mandatory sentences are days. We have a minimum mandatory 1-year sentence for a crime of having pornography that shows 8 to 10-year-old girls being raped. Now, I would think 1-year minimum sentence for that kind of promotion of this degradation of children would be something that all of us could support. I've heard people on the floor say that our substitute does not fully cover some areas, like Indian women. Well, our bill assures that Indian women are going to have the protections in a constitutional way, so the bill is not thrown out. Indian women on reservations are particularly vulnerable. And my colleague, Senator Murkowski, has told me that in Alaska they don't have reservations to a great extent, but they do have a record of abuse of Indian women, and we need to protect them. And we do it in a constitutional way in our substitute, and I think that protection is very important. Has been determined by several organizations, criminal justice organizations, that the underlying bill is not constitutional and would not work for Indian women. It has been asserted on the floor that we don't protect same-sex sexual violence, but we do. We neutralize in our bill any reference or discrimination. In fact, I will read the language of our bill. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, sex, or disability, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity funded in whole or in part with funds made available under this Act. We cover every person who is a victim under this bill. And I have been made aware through really just very sad stories of the need to protect men as well as same-sex domestic violence. Men who have been gang raped are less likely to report it because of a shame that they feel, and it's a relatively, it's a different aspect than we have dealt with in previous violence against women bills. But it's real, and we do need to cover that, and we do in the substitute bill, absolutely fully. We cover victims of domestic violence in our bill, and that is what is important to all of us. Immigrant women who are illegal have the same protections that they have had in every Violence Against Women Act that has been passed over the last 16 years. So we do not change that, and we do not change the authorization levels. So all of these things, along with our strengthening of the bill with the Marshal's ability to get administrative subpoenas, as well as the minimum sentences that are so very important, make our bill the right alternative. And I have said before that I feel so strongly about this issue that I intend to vote for of course, my amendment, which I think is strengthening, most certainly for Senator Cornyn's amendment, which is a strengthening amendment to the underlying bill. It is included in our substitute as well. Senator Cornyn is another co-sponsor, as is Senator McConnell, of the substitute. But I intend to vote for the underlying bill, even with its flaws, because I want to make sure that there is no cutting off of the aspects of this most important legislation because of the timeliness of our actions. And let me say, Mr. President,
The majority has 3 minutes remaining reserved for the junior senator from Texas. The minority, sorry.
Madam President, does the senator wish to speak further? I'm happy to yield.
Madam President, I'd be glad to yield to Senator Hutchison 2 of the 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Without objection.
Say that I have had a long record in this area. When I was a member of the state legislature, Texas passed the most far-reaching protection for victims of rape in the whole country. And, Madam President, I was the lead sponsor of that bill. And when we passed it in 1975, it then became the model that other states used to strengthen the laws for help for these victims. One day, just in this last year, I was at the grocery store in Dallas, Texas, and a woman came up to my truck that I was driving, knocked on the window. I had no idea what she was going to say, but I rolled the window down, and she said, "Senator Hutchison, thank you for the bill you passed in Texas in 1975, because I was a victim of rape, and I wouldn't have gone forward without your protections, but I did, and that man was sent to prison." That's what we're here for, Madam President, and that's why I have this strong substitute. Thank you, and I thank my colleague, Senator Cornyn.
Madam President.
The other senator from Texas.
Madam President, I have letters supportive of the legislation that we've talked about, the SAFER Amendment, the alternative to the Klobuchar Amendment, from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, from Arrow Child and Family Ministries, from the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, and from PROTECT. And I would ask unanimous consent that all those letters be made part of the record.
Without objection.
Following my remarks. I want to talk just about one aspect of Senator Hutchison's legislation that's also included in my standalone amendment, and this is the administrative subpoena authority, because this has been taken out of the Klobuchar alternative, is not in the underlying Leahy bill. What happens is sex offenders are required to register, and if they don't register, they are much more likely to commit future acts of sexual assault and abuse, particularly against children. Matter of fact, one of the biggest indicators that somebody's likely to reoffend is when they don't register. And so what this, the Hutchison bill does, what my bill does, is to give U.S. Marshals the administrative subpoenas to collect records and information to help identify these unregistered sex offenders and to protect future victims from their sexual assault, because if they are registered, if they're identified, they're much less likely to reoffend and commit further acts of sexual abuse. So I think there's, we all want to see this legislation passed, but I will just reiterate for my colleagues' benefit the letter we received from the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network that said that the alternative to my amendment that will be offered, that the alternative is largely symbolic and will not have the impact of reducing the backlog that we find in the Cornyn Amendment. So I would ask my colleagues to support the amendment and to support certainly Senator Hutchison's amendment, which, and I commend her for her great work on this subject.
Madam President.
Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, how much time is remaining aside?
6 minutes and 20 seconds
Far side. And how
for the
much,
majority.
And how much on the other side?
0.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that John Tracy of my staff be given privileges on the floor for the rest of this.
Without objection.
And, Madam President, I would just say that the Leahy-Crapo bill does not eliminate the focus on violence against women. It protects all women, unlike the Republican proposal, which strips out so many aspects. I'll put my full statement in the record, but our bill is inclusive. Theirs is exclusive. A victim is a victim is a victim. We don't exclude anybody. As the distinguished senator from New Hampshire said earlier today, they don't ask who the victim is when there is a victim. Madam President, my remaining time, 2 minutes to the senator from New Jersey and the remaining time to the senator from Minnesota, Senator Klobuchar.
Madam President.
The senator from New Jersey.
First of all, I want to salute the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee for the incredible work that he has done to bring us to this moment. I held a roundtable in New Jersey with about 35 organizations who deal with the challenge of violence against women, and they unequivocally expressed their support for what we are doing here today and the importance in the lives of women that they deal with every day. And I know that my friends on the other side of the aisle are trying to strip provisions that protect women from discrimination and abuse in certain categories. And in my view, violence against any woman is still violence. The nation has been outraged about violence against women for almost 2 decades. We've seen the violence. We've continued to fight against it. We have tried to end it. And in my mind, there is no doubt that I would find it very hard to understand why anyone would stand in the way of denouncing violence against any woman, no matter who they are, no matter what their class is. So I'm hard-pressed to understand why anyone would choose to exclude violence against certain women, turn back the clock to a time when such violence was not recognized, was not a national disgrace, and make a distinction when and against whom such violence meets our threshold of outrage. In my mind, there can be no such threshold, no such distinction. Violence against any woman is an outrage, plain and simple. And the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act doesn't just affect those who are here or might become victims of sexual violence or domestic violence. It affects all of us. Nearly 1 in 5 women report being the victim of a rape or attempted rape. 1 in 6 report being stalked. 1 in 4 women report having been beaten by their partner. And of those who report being raped, 80% report being raped before the age of 25. The short-term physical and emotional trauma of such an event cannot be overstated, and that is why it is critical that we pass VAWA as the committee has moved forward. With that, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Minnesota.
Madam President, I call up amendment number 2094.
The clerk will report.
The senator from Minnesota, Ms. Klobuchar, proposes an amendment number 2094.
Madam
the
President,
appropriate place.
I ask consent that the further reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, I thank Senator Cornyn and Senator Hutchinson for their words and their work. I rise to discuss my amendment that would respond to the problems that we are seeing with rape kit backlogs, which Senator Cornyn has identified, while also reinforcing what we know is working well on this issue. This amendment would amend the Debbie Smith Act, which, just like the Violence Against Women Act, has a history of bipartisan support. The Debbie Smith Act, as you know, was enacted in 2004. It was named after a courageous survivor of sexual assault. What this amendment does is to basically increase the percentage of Debbie Smith grant funds that are available for use in testing the backlog of rape kits. We'd raise the current percentage of 40% up to 70%, so it is a significant change. The amendment also asks the National Institute of Justice to develop protocols to help law enforcement with sexual assault cases and to provide technical assistance and training to law enforcement and local governments. The amendment also allows funds to be used for auditing rape kit backlogs, which is one of the important issues that Senator Cornyn's amendment addresses. The difference between Senator Cornyn's amendment and my amendment is that mine does not mandate that a minimum percentage of funds be used for audits. Senator Cornyn's amendment also has provisions like subpoena authority for U.S. Marshals who are tracking fugitive sex offenders that I've supported in the past and I will continue to support in the future. I will be glad to work with Senator Cornyn and Chairman Leahy and others to get this done and to look for an appropriate vehicle to address this issue. But today, Madam President, is about passing VAWA without delay. We have worked on the Judiciary Committee for months with every group that wanted to have a say in the reauthorization of VAWA, and we have worked closely with all on the committee. As you know, Senator Crapo has been the longtime Republican co-author of this bill. We have a number of Republican supporters, and I want to end with the words of Paul Wellstone, who once served in the Senate on behalf of the state of Minnesota, who is a fierce advocate for the Violence Against Women Act, and he said this: "What are we waiting for? Too many have spoken with their voices and with their lives, and this violence must end." Let's get the Violence Against Women Act done. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President, we're about to vote. This is a time for both Republicans and Democrats to come together and say what we all know in our heart. We oppose violence against women. But let's say it not just in our heart. Let's say it in legislation, good legislation. Madam President, the ayes and nays been ordered?
They have not.
And Madam President, which is the first amendment to be considered?
Klobuchar.
Would be the Klobuchar?
Question is on the Klobuchar amendment, number 2049.
Madam President, I ask for the ayes and nays.
Is there a sufficient second?
Amy?
There appears to be. There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Beckidge, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Dement. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Noway. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative. Senators voting in the affirmative. Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown of Ohio, Durbin, Klobuchar, Leahy, Menendez, Murray, Reed of Nevada, and Shaheen. Senators voting in the negative. Cochran, Crapo, DeMint, Isaacson, Kyle, Lee, and McConnell. Mr. Grassley, no. Mr. Cornyn, no. Mr. Rubio, no. Mr. Warner, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Lugar, no. Mr. Heller, aye. Mr. Paul, no. Mr. Manchin, aye. Mr. Corker, no. Mr. Roberts, no. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Johans, no. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Mr. Nelson, Nebraska, aye. Mr. Sanders, aye. Mr. Beckidge. Mr. Beckidge, aye. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson of Florida, aye. Mr. Hatch, no. Mr. Pryor, aye. Mr. Bingaman, aye. Mr. Franken, aye. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Blunt, no. Mr. Tester, aye. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Coburn, no. Mr. Toomey, no. Mr. Inouye, aye. Mr. Graham, no. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Mr. Wicker, no. Mr. Carey, aye. Mr. Johnson, Wisconsin, no. Ms. Ayotte, no. Mr. Coates, no. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer, aye. Ms. Mikulski. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Conrad, aye. Mr. Inhofe, no. Mr. Enzi, no. Mrs. Hutchison, no. Ms. Stabenow. Stabenow, aye. Mr. Chambliss, no. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Burr, no. Mr. Vitter, no. Mr. Lieberman, aye. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander, no. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Coons, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Portman, no. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Baucus, aye. Ms. Cole. Mr. Cole, aye. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Sessions, no. Mr. Akaka, aye. Mr. Cardin, aye. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin, aye. Mr. Bozeman, no. Ms. Lugar. Mr. Lugar, no. Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Hoven, no. Hey, Dave. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. McCain, no. Mr. Moran, no. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Mrs. McCaskill, aye. Mr. Harkin, aye. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Merkley? Aye.
Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to vote or wishing to change their votes? Hearing none, on this vote, the yeas are 57, the nays are 41. Under the previous order requiring 60 votes for the adoption of this amendment, the amendment is not agreed to. Under the previous order, there will now be 2 minutes of debate, equally divided. Prior to a vote in relation to amendment number 2086, offered by the senator from Texas, Mr. Cornyn. The Senate will be in order. Senator from Texas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Those of you who supported the Klobuchar amendment, here is your last chance to make sure that more money under the Debbie Smith Act is appropriated and directed towards solving the 400,000 untested rape kit backlog in this country that is nothing short of a national scandal. We know that the people who commit these sexual assault crimes are serial offenders. If you don't catch them early, more people are going to get hurt. And the best way to catch them is to collect this DNA, match it against bank DNA, and to take them off the street, and to exonerate those who may be under suspicion but who are innocent. So I hope my colleagues will support this amendment. It has the support of the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. It has administrative subpoenas to track down unregistered sex offenders who are more likely to commit crimes against children and other innocent victims. Please vote for this amendment. It will strengthen the Violence Against Women Act, and you can be proud of your vote.
The senator from Vermont.
Well, Madam President, we've been able to make very good progress on rape kit backlogs in the Leahy-Crapo bill. I wish we had passed, of course, the Klobuchar amendment. The Cornyn amendment is well-intentioned, but it's going to undermine rather than enhance the progress we've made. His amendment would divert funding from the Debbie Smith rape kit backlog. Let me repeat that. Would divert funding from the Debbie Smith rape kit backlog reduction program.
Senator from Vermont.
It would divert money or funding from the Debbie Smith rape kit backlog reduction program. It would force state and local enforcement to invest time and resources to comply with onerous, illogical reporting requirements. Key victims groups have opposed it, saying all the things it adds in there, the things that we have taken care of to help victims, things that this amendment adds would actually hurt them. I would strongly oppose it.
The question is on the amendment.